As I say, thank you ever so much for joining us today, and a massive welcome to Brian, who will be talking us through the retrofit qualifications, the landscapes, and looking at some of the micro credentials. The reason that we're here today, and the reason why we've got the opportunity to do and develop this work, is for the last 2 years we at SLP have been working with the Mayor around the Green Skills Academy Hub and how we support our training providers and our employer organisations to develop a curriculum to respond to the challenges and opportunities within the green economy. And we have had some particular focus around retrofit because we were happily successful in securing a bit of funding from the Greater South East Net Zero Hub, supported by the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero, and helping to develop retrofit skills pilots and that looking at qualifications, but also broader skills across the sector and across partners and stakeholders, and looking at the system-wide challenge of retrofit and how we support our businesses to take opportunity and commercial advantage of the approximate £17 billion worth of investment that can be made over the next 10 years, but also as a response to the opportunity of retrofitting our 635,000 properties that we anticipate will require 66,000 person years. And the biggest challenge for us to develop that is around skills and making sure that not only we encourage a new talent pipeline and supply chain into the construction and built environment sector, but that we also think and ensure that we have the skills required within our existing trades and supply chain to make sure we can actually deliver on the retrofit requirements across South West London. This is not just a South West London challenge, this is a national challenge, and we've been working with partners such as the National Retrofit Hub, with our borough colleagues, with our training providers, universities, FE colleges and schools to tackle and try and support the supply of skilled talent. So I'd like to hand over to Brian, who's going to take you through some of those things and talk about some of the opportunities that they've been developing. As I say, please use the chat, but also there'll be opportunity for questions at the end. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Hi, colleagues. My name's Bryan Horne. I'm the Director of Qualifications at OCN London. Just a quick background to me. I've worked in the construction sector for many years. I was involved working for CITB for far too many years to remember. And I've also developed retrofit qualifications and also micro credentials. In the past sort of 8 to 10 years of my career, before moving to OCN London, I was a vocational qualifications director at Ofqual, which is the government regulator regulating qualifications. So what I'm going to talk about today is give an overview of qualifications and then go through more specifically some of the skills requirements within the retrofit sector, and then finish off with an analysis, just a quick sort of whiz through of the type of micro credentials that we've been developing in this landscape and how we think they can make a difference. So 3 main parts to the presentation today. Looking to begin at qualifications. Clearly what the qualifications structure allows for is both entry into retrofit careers, but also progression within the subsector. So looking at qualifications itself, and excuse this sort of rather sort of basic intro, but I think whenever you start talking about qualifications, it's always helpful to start looking at what the RQF framework looks like. And this is described, and this is probably the best diagram. And I remember back in the day, we were trying to draw this when I worked at Ofqual, and it took us ages. We had tins on shelves, we had packets of beans, we had loads of different analogies. And the one that we came up with at the time was the idea of books. So qualifications are a little bit like books on shelves. So you can do very similar qualifications at very low levels. You can do bigger qualifications at different levels, small bite-sized qualifications, etc. So it's worth just thinking that through as we talk about qualifications, the different types and levels. In the construction sector, as you're probably mostly aware, level 2 normally equates to job ready. Level 1 learners probably aren't job ready. And then level 3 is beginning to look at skills or supervisory level. And the way I always look at it is you look at carpentry and joinery and door hanging. At level 2, if you were hanging a door on a building site, you'd actually need supervision. Whereas level 3, you'd be pretty much competent in being able to hang a door without supervision. So it's that type of thing, level of independence, and also the level of content, technical content. Going into the sector itself, there are qualifications available, and I've deliberately taken off the awarding organisations here because I didn't want to advertise any particular product, so it's relatively neutral. But there are qualifications available at level 2 and level 3. Level 2 qualifications are quite simple access qualifications into the world of retrofit, and they're there for probably operatives, tradespeople who would want to start in retrofit, or who perhaps have got a little bit of retrofit experience, but they want to work into a more professional role. So you've got level 2 qualifications out there. You've also got then quite specific roles at level 3 and above, based on the particular job roles within the retrofit subsector. So, for instance, the PAS documents, the retrofit dwellings for improved energy efficiency, they specify, this is a Department for Energy Security and Net Zero authored document, but they specify particular roles. So there is a level 3 certificate for retrofit assessors, and that's all about understanding, being able to go in to understand a building structure, look at the occupancy, and look at what you want to do with a building. So it assesses a building for the type of work. So that's quite a technical role. So you'll find that most of these particular roles attached to the PAS definitions tend to be at level 3. When you go up into the higher level roles, if you go into coordination and risk management, so the whole coordination of a retrofit project and managing it, then this role tends to equate to a higher level site management role. So a construction site manager would be on level 5, level 6. You are talking about putting the, well, you don't put your hard hat behind you, but they're the guys and girls who start to wear the suits and ties. So these are the people who will be doing the planning. So you're up to level 5. Level 5 on the sort of RQF level equates to you're up in the sort of lower university level HND type courses in terms of the level of demand. And this qualification, the level 5 diploma, is a high level one with quite a high level technical demand, and it also demands quite a level of people skills and managing staff and teams of staff. So that's why it's a level 5, and it's quite a demanding qualification. So turning now to job roles, and again, I'm focusing primarily on the retrofit sector, but the PAS framework, as you're probably aware, defines a number of job roles. It starts at the advisor in terms of going into a building and giving advice as to what can be done. The more technical assessor role, where obviously a more detailed assessment of what work is going to be undertaken and what schedules are going to be used and over what time period is the retrofit exercise going to be carried out. You've then got a coordinator role, whose role it is very specifically to, as it says on the tin, really coordinate the work. Oftentimes with a big building, you will have phases of different work. So you'll have the electrical work going on, you'll have the sort of plumbing work being stripped out, and you'll have a raft of different projects. If you did everything sequentially for a full retrofit, it would take a very long time. So for a properly assessed and coordinated retrofit exercise with a big building, let's say a large sort of Victorian era dwelling, if you were going to retrofit that, then you would have about 5 or 6 current work streams all going along at the same time. And that's the importance of the coordinator, to make sure that everything's in and out at the right time. The designer, again, designs the work in terms of what do we actually need, where do we want things placed in, what particular pieces of kit do we want introducing into the house. And then, of course, you've got your retrofit installers, who tend to be tradespeople more generally. You tend to have people from electricians, plumbers, who've developed skills, particularly in retrofit. And then, of course, you've got the final role, which is the retrofit evaluator, who has a front-end role to look at the performance of a building and then evaluate at the end to be able to show that the retrofit activity has actually delivered the improvements that you want it to. So those roles are quite specific and quite tightly defined. And as I said, just to talk through, the importance of a retrofit coordinator is that if you wanted a project to be eligible for any public funding, then a retrofit coordinator will ensure that the project adheres to PAS 2035 principles. So within the PAS framework, there are a set of principles as to how the work should be carried out. And obviously you need a properly qualified retrofit coordinator to do the work to be eligible for public funding. So this is a sort of a snapshot of the roles as I've just described them, and it starts to pick out here the sort of things that would be demanded and asked of these individuals. So an assessor would be doing an energy performance certificate survey, so they will be asked to do that. A retrofit designer would normally be highly skilled, typically an architect, and then evaluator. There's a whole raft of data expectations from that particular role. So in terms of the skill set, obviously that's the sort of highlight view of the retrofit activity, reducing energy consumption and maintaining highly important sustainability aspects to the work. And it's about making existing structures upgraded and improved to make them much more energy efficient. And what you'll find is that in any typical housing stock in an inner city, you'll find that virtually 80% of them could benefit from retrofit. So it's a highly efficient way of minimizing energy use from a set of houses in a particular set of neighborhoods. So looking at the skills, what I've tended to do, and again, I'm going now into sort of qualification mode, and I'm talking from my own personal sort of background as to what I would start to do when I was looking at a qualification. So for an advisor, they need to know these things. They need to be knowledgeable. They need to be familiar with building codes. So already here, when I'm pulling together the qualifications, and this is how we built these qualifications, and we still do, A learning outcome would be that a learner needs to understand and be aware of the various building codes relating to energy efficiency, and they need communication skills and a whole raft of other things. If you look at the apprenticeship frameworks, there isn't a retrofit apprenticeship per se, but they have followed this similar sort of knowledge, skills and behaviour pattern. An installer, for instance, needs to have these knowledge sets. They need to be aware of a wide range of things. And also for the installer, as I said before, in many cases, it would be an existing plumber or an electrician. So they would have experience of using the tools necessary to do the job in a retrofit exercise. An assessor, again, you can see there, and again here, the ability to use energy modelling software and a quite broad knowledge base for an assessor. So talking about micro-credentials then, I mean, clearly there is a qualification landscape that covers those roles. So if you go back to those roles, there are specific qualifications. But what we've found, and this is what I'm going to highlight in the next 10 minutes or so, is that micro-credentials, small bite-sized learning opportunities, can be ideal ways of providing the skills and the knowledge that existing operatives actually need. So rather than look at a broad qualification, if a plumber's coming on site for a particular piece of work, then you could potentially deliver a short, sharp training activity to bring them up to speed on the retrofit world, what it means for them, and how it can apply to their specific trade. So it's an ideal way of delivering upskilling without a massively large qualification that someone would have to take time off work to study. So just going through the types of sort of micro-credentials that we've developed at OCN London is we've developed a range of digital badges, and most of these micro-credentials that we've developed are linked into online courses, and they include attendance. So it might well be it's attendance at a professional event. It might be an element of CPD that a learner's attended and taken part in. So there's an attendance badge. There's also a set of digital badges, and this is one that we've developed. So train tutors to deliver renewable energy. So again, these are typically 10 to 30 or 40 hours of tuition. And normally, as I've said, they will be online. So it will be about 10 hours, 12, 15 hours of online study. Very similar to some of the Open University sort of bite-sized learning opportunities. But the advantage of these badges is what we do is we quality assure the content underneath them. So we make sure that the learning outcomes and the assessment criteria and the assessment methodology and the delivery materials all match up. And we also consult with experts to make sure that what we're doing is legitimate, it carries weight. So not only do we put our mark on it, our brand as a regulated awarding organisation, but we also work with partners, and I'll talk a little bit about partners in a little while. But that's a typical digital badge. Normally on completion of learning, what we do is we generate these via email. So these badges can be sort of pinged to learners, and they can be added into things like curriculum vitae CVs. You can put them onto LinkedIn, you can put them onto Facebook, etc., etc. So there's a whole raft of opportunities to keep these, and they're maintained on platform as digital badges for learners to access. What we have also done is developed a certification badge so that when a learner has reached a certain level, they've reached maybe 5 or 6 particular badges, they've done 4 or 5 aspects of retrofit, we can build and we can put together a final certificate. And what we can do on the back of this also is we can actually build a qualification onto this, so that not only do the micro credentials stack up, but they will allow you at the end of maybe sort of 5 or 6 micro credentials to achieve a certificate. So we can build in qualifications on the back of this. And that shows that there's, as I say, there's a learner journey. This one was about artificial intelligence, but nevertheless, it builds to the point that having got all of the individual badges, a learner is on a pathway. And when they've completed the pathway, then they will achieve the certificate. And then what we're doing with this particular pathway is we are converting it now to a qualification. So a learner and they can do it at their own pace. So they can do the individual units, and then they can achieve the qualification at the end of it. So in terms of work, over the past year particularly, we've worked both with South London, but we've also worked with the BIM Academy, we've worked with supply chain sustainability, we've worked with local London, and we've worked with the CITB and a range of other partners. So we've worked with a range of organisations to develop these micro credentials. And these are some of the things that we've done in the past year. So we've developed a suite around digital construction, building information modelling. We've done some badges around the green economy, which we've developed with University of East London. And with the supply chain sustainability, we've done a whole school, we've done a whole batch of retrofit and green skills, mini qualifications that cover a whole range of things, as you can see there: carbon reporting, sustainable procurement, etc. So, as I said, building information modelling, that was one that was there was a suite of that, and this takes you through a whole raft of teaches you about the standards, applying BIM concepts, right the way through to COBE and a whole raft of other micro credentials. So doing this suite gives you a pretty comprehensive understanding of building information modelling. So in terms of the process, basically how we do this is we work in the initial stages with partners, we develop the phases and the deliverables, and then eventually we deliver a set of products. And we've been doing this at pace. So in the past year, we've developed that broad range of micro credentials that we talked about earlier. So this is the BIM one. In this one, we worked with Newham College, we worked with the BIM Academy, we developed the micro credentials, we developed the content, we developed the micro credentials badge designs, the metadata, and at the end of the day, we had a full program of micro credentials developed and built. So the outcomes, we got the designs, we got an online platform hosting them, and we're now working with delivery partners to look at support in terms of implementation. So how can these learning opportunities be made real? And we've also been developing a wide range of promotional materials that go with them. So this is the retrofit one that we did. And you can see there that I've taken out names, but normally this would be, it would have an individual's name and it would say when it was issued. And it also has the badges of partners. So we are currently developing some with South London, which I'll talk about in a minute or two. But you can see there that the partners are all there. And this badge can be verified. So a learner can go online or an employer can go online and they can check that this individual has received this badge and that they've gone through this particular course. So that's a typical badge. What are we doing in South London? Well, in South London, we're again looking at retrofit. Tomorrow we've got a careers event looking at green jobs and skills and methods of progressing into and within the industry. We're developing course materials. We've started doing that already with South Thames Colleges Group and the University of Roehampton. And the idea from this work is that we will develop a complete suite of qualifications. What we're going to try and do with the South London retrofit qualifications is to give them a South London flavour. So rather than have a sort of, bog standard, this is what it is, this is a job roles, this is how it works, really try and get an understanding of how retrofit might be important in a specific region such as South London, and looking at the specific boroughs. If we can develop small qualifications that actually target specific boroughs and say, within the area, within this particular borough, we've looked at local building stock, we've analysed, and we've come up with these sorts of assessments, and that's the sort of thing that we're doing with South Thames and the University of Roehampton at the moment. We're trying to take it to that local level, but there'll be really great qualifications, and I'm sure they'll be really helpful for people who take them. So just to summarise then, what do OCN London bring to the table? Well, I think, obviously we've got significant experience, over 30 years experience of building qualifications. So what we bring to the table in terms of the OCN London brand is the confidence that these qualifications have been developed by a regulated awarding organisation. And we can also set micro-credentials against broader product offers. So we can set it up against qualifications, we can build it against a broad range of different offers. We can also set them against qualifications from other awarding organisations, which is probably something that I shouldn't really be saying, but we can do that. So, if there is a particular qualification from Pearson, for example, or City and Guilds, then we can develop micro-credentials that actually provide access and support access for individuals who might want to do that. So I'll finish at that. I was always aiming at about 30 minutes, if that's okay, Polly.
No, that's absolutely brilliant, Bryan. Thank you very much. There are just a couple of questions in the chat. So just to pick those up from David Randall. What are the entry qualifications or the prerequisites, if any, in order to enter a level 3 qualification?
In terms of retrofit?
Yes.
I mean, the actual qualifications themselves tend to say experience in reasonably, a similar trade. So you'd expect a level, it depends on the role that you wanted to do, but you'd be expected to have a level 2 in something similar, or an understanding of that level and the construction industry at that level. So that's what I will be looking for, and that's how the qualifications are structured. They're not very specific in the sense that you have to do level 2 in X, Y, or Z. So providing you're capable of doing the course, what you tend to find is for the level 3 roles, you tend to find that they are people who've been on the trades. I mean, they're described classically as the biblical trades. So you tend to find that you've got level 2 carpentry and joinery or plumbers who would be going into this area.
And I think,
Bryan, it's kind of, so to follow up on that, Polly.
I was just going to say from our experience that particularly around the retrofit specific qualifications, that in actual fact, although if you were a learner and going on a course, there's no kind of academic prerequisite.
No.
You need to understand the fabrication of a building, and many providers are actually insisting on 2 or 3 years experience of working in the trade before embarking on that kind of qualification. So what these aren't necessarily entry level qualifications, and I think we've put a colleague of ours on the domestic retrofit assessor training, so they have a better understanding. But because you have to do practical, you have to provide practical assessments and experience, it is quite challenging. So you do have to have had some experience, or at least that's what the good quality training providers are telling us.
Yeah, indeed. And I think just to support that, Polly, what I would say is that, again, I'll wear my Ofqual hat that I used to wear anyway, is that the expectation on all training providers is that they properly assess the learner's suitability to do one of these qualifications. So a training provider would, in order to get a proper completion rate on these, they would want people with 2 or 3 years experience in the industry. The cost of employing them, it's difficult. I'm picking up the questions in the chat, David. And I think Matthew's answered it as well. You know, it's how long is a piece of string, really. You know, it depends on whether you've got public money or not, but you don't need a massive in many instances you can go into building and do a small retrofit project that doesn't cost that much, you know, simple installation of PVC windows and a few other things you can do quite quickly in a building at relatively low cost. So you might not need the full range of assessment in the way that it's defined, but in order to get public funding, then it does tend to have to adhere to past requirements. But as Matthew said, if privately funded, you don't need them.
There's another question. I think it's, will these digital badges eventually be smart contracts on a blockchain?
What we're looking to do, and that's for myself, David, what we're looking to do is to make them as flexible as we can. So we've, at the moment, I don't see any reason why they can't. We are building them up into a structure at the moment. We've got about 30 of them in the green and the green and retrofit sector. So I think over the next 6 months, we're taking an overview. And what we want them to be is as flexible as we possibly can. I mean, ideally, what we don't want to do is undercut qualifications, but to get someone with 2 or 3 years experience in the biblical trades and provide them with the amount of upskilling, particularly if it's a privately funded job, to come in and do some retrofit work, that will be an ideal place for these micro credentials.
And I think there's another question is, who is assessing the teacher qualification? And so from my experience, it's generally the awarding organisations that will assess competency and the training providers themselves in terms of ensuring that the staff that are delivering the qualifications are qualified to do that. But happy for you, Bryan, to say yes or
yes,
no.
Yeah, I mean, what we do with our micro credentials is we do sort of a centre approval process whereby we will check that the centre has the ability to properly say that a candidate has got a particular skill set. So we'll go in and check, and again, it's very similar to the sort of CITB industry standard requirements, that if you are assessing someone at a level, you have at least the level and above to be able to make a judgment that the learner can do what they say they can do. So we do make sure that the assessors have the right skill levels to make these safe awards.
And Bryan, there's another question around the micro credentials. Could the course also be aimed at teachers, CPD and upskilling for teachers?
They can, indeed they can. And I mean, what we have been doing is we've been developing train the trainers. So we've been developing qualifications for green skills in particular, whereby we're looking at train the trainers. One of the ones that we've done is on air source heat pumps. So with heat pumps, we've actually developed qualifications for people to actually train the trainer, so to speak. What I'd say at the moment is if colleagues on the call have a particular interest in a micro credential that they would like us to see develop, first thing is just give me a bell, give me a call. I think my contact details are available, or they will be available, and we can talk it through with you. So if you think, well, actually, it would be really good to have this, then we can work with you to develop these. But we are, as I say, we're trying to develop a large suite. Do they involve on-site assessments? Again, you know, I sort of come from an OSAT background where on-site assessments are really helpful. If OSAT is an assessment mechanism that would help deliver, then yes, you can do via OSAT, you can do via on-site. If it works for the batch, if it works for the micro-credential.
And I think just it's sort of important to say that the reason why we've been working on these micro-credentials and we welcome those is that we've spoken to a lot of SMEs, Federation of Master Builders, CITB, and they have said that trying to engage the supply chain more broadly has been incredibly difficult. And actually, these micro-credentials are really useful in a pathway to then extending their learning and doing some more, higher level and involved training and learning. Because at the moment there's so much work and no capacity or stretch within the sector that committing to long qualifications has been really, really challenging. And so if there was anything that we could do through micro-credentials to really start to engage the supply chain, then please could we do some of that work? And this is where our kind of interest came from, really, which was working with the sector and then saying, well, this is what we really need. And actually, don't get me wrong, I don't think it's ever been a quick fix. I think this was all about how we pique interest and how we start to ensure that our businesses have that commercial advantage and have the skills they need to deliver. And I think there's a sector concern that we're not going to be ready, but we can see that we're going to need more people to be ready, but at the moment they're not. And whilst we can absolutely influence the current talent supply chain that's coming through our FE and HE sector at the moment, we've got an opportunity to still influence them. I think it's the existing workforce that we're really trying to engage with some of this work.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that, Polly. I mean, what we are also doing to sort of hopefully improve accessibility and uptake for these type of micro-credentials is we're working in partnership with the CITB at the moment, and wherever possible, we're trying to align them so that they're in scope. So where they are in scope for grant funding, we can map them very well to grant entitled training. So the idea is that they will have, for those who pay the levy, they will be able to draw down CITB grant for these qualifications as well. So we're sort of, as I say, having worked at CITB, I know how to fit them into the scope. And what we've been trying to do is make sure that they meet the scope requirements so that they can attract levy, which is, again, helpful.
And in South London, we're one of the pilots. That means that the CITB do all the paperwork and pay for all the qualifications. There's no they're trying to remove the administration for particularly small organisations.
That's right.
So means that they can access a list of free funding, and rather than having to pay for it and then get refunded, they're actually CITB are paying for it directly with approved providers. So there is a real opportunity to make a difference, particularly around qualifications in South London. And it's, how we support our existing trades to be ready and prepared for retrofitting and retrofitting South London. And there's a massive appetite across our leadership, so across the leaders and the chief execs across the South London partnership boroughs to really push and move on this. We have some work coming up over the next few weeks that are really going to try and cement the retrofit cluster in South London and really identify the other pieces of collective work that we need to do. And I'm conscious we're coming towards the end of the 45 minutes. Thank you so much, Bryan. It's been really interesting to hear about your journey and how we link that to some of the demands and challenges and opportunities that we've got in South London. There's one final question that David's got. We'll allow him. Who's deciding how many PAS qualifications there'll be and how many more are in the pipeline? So I think
it's got I don't think there'll be any more in the pipeline in the sense of job roles, because the qualifications defined in the PAS document are linked to defined job roles. So there is a limit to how many job roles there are. how many qualifications there are. It might be that different awarding organisations offer different qualifications for the same job role, but in essence, there will only be the job roles that we've described.
And I think that PAS is not is a competency as opposed as a qualification, isn't it?
That's
and I
right.
think
PAS is a framework to say that if you're going to do retrofit, these are the job roles, these are the competencies, and this is the sort of way in which a retrofit activity should be carried out. So really, having defined the job roles, the qualifications were developed on the back of those job roles, and the as I say, I think it's as Polly said, it's a competency framework. So the answer is there are no more in the pipeline. There might be different flavours of them from different awarding organisations, but there are no new ones that are going to emerge out the woodwork.
brilliant, thank you. I mean, it's obviously a very hot topic, and there's obviously a lot to say. Georgina's dropped Brian's email in the chat. If any partners would like to talk to Brian, then please do get in touch. This webinar will be available on our website along with the slides. So if you would like to share this with colleagues as soon as it's up, we will let you know. But thank you so much for your contribution, and thank you so much for joining us today. And we really hope that you find this useful. There's the link to our website in the chat as well. The website is there as a resource for everyone. It's our one-stop shop. It's going to be where we try and bring all of this information together for everyone, for our trades, for our practitioners, and we're really working on building that out, and we'll be adding more information there. We've got a whole range of events coming up over the next few weeks and months, and while we deliver for Department of Energy Security Net Zero and Greater South East Net Zero Hub, but this is absolutely the start. It's not the end. So we're really thankful and grateful for all your contributions, and then we look forward to seeing you at some more events over the next few weeks. Thank you ever so much. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye bye.
Cheers.